Hello.
Hi.
Is it Laura? Laura, yes. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I have my echo on, excuse me. Echo, stop music. I using my old technology in my office too. Well, as I mentioned, I'm going to kind of review the course, whether or not there's people here. So nice that there's actually people here today. So hello, Mercedes.
Hello.
Nice to meet you as well. My plan is to go through kind of the course on Canvas, give you a little idea of what the expectations are and how it's laid out, which you probably figured out now a few days into it. And then I'll go through and highlight the information from the PowerPoints that are posted and give you some general ideas of how to prepare for the course to get through the 5 weeks. So nice to have you here. So there might be people jumping in here and there. So if they do, we'll just continue forward. So I'm gonna have to ask you right now though, if I share my screen, are you able to see my Canvas course right now? Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. All of a sudden my tools went over to my other screen, so I never know for sure. All right, so this is the AT course for the education department. Obviously you're registered as an education student or special education student. And I've taught this course now for, this is probably sixth or seventh time. So there have been some tweaks along the way. I've done some changes. The most recent one was changing the textbook, which I feel is much more appropriate to the needs of students in the education department. So I think you'll find it to be very useful. And the PowerPoints I decided to just use from the publisher rather than the ones I had created because they'll be more specific to the readings. So you'll find there's several chapters and several PowerPoints per module, which is why I wanted to be available to you guys on at least once a week. So if you have questions, you want to ask anything along the way, feel free to interrupt me. Otherwise, I'll just kind of proceed through, okay? So I'm sure you found the modules format here. You'll see the overview, which is the general description. What I like to do is go in sequence and change my size here a little bit. All right. So the overview includes the basic information about AT and how we evaluate students for the needs of assistive technology. So that'll be highlighted there in the first component of the module. The second component here is the read and review, where you'll find all the required information, which is basically the textbook information. So information from the quizzes will come primarily from these chapter readings, which is why I just posted that I unpublished the quiz because I realized there were some questions that weren't from these readings. I wanted to update that. So I noticed nobody had started the quiz yet. It was open this morning, so hopefully I'll get it out there by late afternoon, early evening. The rest of the information here is really just more supplemental. There's some nice video links that'll help you understand AT in general, if it's new to you, or even if it's not, just to be a better understanding of what maybe you already know about AT.
Are you guys getting chilly or what? You should give me some tripe. Yeah.
So his mic is on.
Put lots of the vegetables, less sauce, less juice.
Yeah, I could probably do something about that. Hold on.
Oh,
That's oops, I just hello, Jeanette. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I muted you or you muted yourself, but thanks for joining us. Just going through the Canvas modules before I begin talking about the first module. So there'll usually be some videos there to help supplement your learning. This book emphasizes much more on universal design for learning, which is why I'm updating the quiz. Previous textbook did not have so much information on what's called UDL. So that would be a very good handout for you, the PDF document there, talking about how AT and UDL work together. And then you'll see the information on the SET framework, which is part of the first assignment that you guys are working on, I'm sure, now that's due on Sunday. Assessment, regarding the quiz, regarding the assignments and discussion posts. So if you just kind of continue through the modules, that'll bring you to the discussion post, which I think many of you have already, as you see here, have run on there. And hopefully all the videos have been working for everybody. You guys had a chance to look at those yet? I'll look back to see if I get some head nods. Yes, okay. All right. Yeah, I like those videos. They come from a site that has a nice kind of description of AT and how it's used in a variety of areas. So I assigned them to you guys just at random, but if there's an area that you're particularly interested in, make sure you go and watch the video, even if it wasn't for your assignment. And then from there, you'll just take your.
Could I interrupt right there really quick? So like on mine, it said to click on the people link. And when I did, I noticed like some of the other students, they had a certain one assigned or something with the name and mine didn't. So I went with the first one and I did a review on that one. Is that okay?
Fine, Jeanette. Yeah, I'll just show you here for future reference. So you see my screen now where I hit people?
Yep.
Yep. So I'm under discussion 1, case assignments. I think I might have added you later. So I think you are right at the top there under Brody. You see that?
Okay. Yeah.
For future
Okay,
reference.
yeah, when I did it the first time, it didn't have anything like that. So I think it was Brody that I did go ahead and do. It
Well,
was
that's
the first
perfect.
video.
Yeah, your name was over here. Oh, here I see it as an Amber, so I'm going to bring her over here. So somebody registered after I set that up, I suppose. So that's how it'll be when I do any sort of groupings in this course.
Okay. And then I have another student messaging me, Stephanie Herman. She's trying to get into the meet and it says, she showed me a screenshot. It says, please wait for host to start this meeting on hers.
Oh,
And I told her we're in it, so.
yeah, let me see if there's any way I can help her with that. Usually I make that,
I just told her to log off and try again, going through the links
Yeah.
on. Right?
yeah, it doesn't show that she's trying to get in, so she might be going in a different meeting room. I would just have her go back to the announcement I just sent, which I would imagine she probably used the same one, but there's no
Yeah.
Stephanie trying to get in here right now. Yeah, I
Okay,
would
she said she's gonna try on her phone right now.
Yeah, go out and come back in is probably a good idea. All right.
I have a question on the discussion as well.
Yeah.
What's the requirement for like replying? Do we?
Yeah, the rubrics for discussion. Where did I put that? Is that not on here?
I think it had like, yeah, right there, points to consider.
Right here. So the requirement is, okay, that's not the same one, is it? I felt like I put it somewhere else. I mean, my general expectation, Lauren, is, Lauren, right? Lauren, is that you would reply to at least one other student. And I don't know if that's written in the rubric I just pulled up there. But that's the expectation. This is an assignment rubric. It's not the discussion rubric. I'll have to make sure that that's properly attached, because when I do go through and grade discussion points, I like to have the rubric right next to me. So posting by the date and then posting at least one response to another student. If that's
And
not
are those due also Friday or Sunday or?
discussion posts are due by the Friday of the week. So end of tonight.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we get that done ahead of time. But you don't see a different rubric, do you, than the one I just showed?
No, and that's why I know in your intro video you had mentioned something about replies,
Right.
but I never saw it in that rubric. So
Right. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to find that. So thanks. I'll make a note of that. That's the hard part about having an asynchronous class. Is that everything's supposedly there, and they, faculty think that you have everything, but you may or may not have what they say. So there is that, and I was just going to go to the assignment. I've had a few questions about the assignment as well. it's kind of a lot of information to take and do an assessment right away. I realize an evaluation, but really it's a way of pulling information out of this case, which it was you, Mercedes, right, that told me that was missing. So hopefully we're all able to find that case now. The SET framework is very well laid out as far as how to fill it, how to complete it. So my expectation is that you would complete it by filling it out exactly the way it's laid out, looking at the needs of the student, looking at the needs of the environment. It's kind of following that process. And then the rubric here should be, it's right below here. Exactly that. So reviewing their needs, completing that framework, some recommendations based upon what you know at this point. So I realize we're just starting the course. So you may have some ideas, just jot them down. No ideas are bad ideas. Just looking for thinking the process through. And then some sort of evidence. I found it in the textbook. I learned about it in another course. I experienced it myself. I used it, whatever kind of evidence you have for that. So that's kind of how each week will go. If there's anything missing, I really appreciate that you guys let me know right away, because I want you to get the most out of the course.
Okay, so for this one, do you want it in like a Word document, or if you click on that SETT, I noticed there's like a chart that kind of comes up. Do you want us to fill that out?
What I would recommend is that you pull the chart up. You can fill it out on there if you're savvy at filling out a PDF document. Otherwise, take the information from this SET framework document and putting on a Word document. Yeah.
Okay.
Either which way, whatever's easier for you.
Okay, that's why I was kind of confused, because I was going to do both. I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, you can do a narrative and then put all the SET information on that chart.
Okay.
Too, so.
Thank you.
I wish I had a really good way of making it an interactive document where you just click on the cells, but for the life of me, I can't figure out an easy way to do that. So, all right. So that's what I have as far as the modules. So every week we'll go pretty much the same with the same sort of time frames. And typically the quiz will open on the Friday morning, except for today when I'm going to do some editing on that. All right. So I'm just going to go through some of the highlights of the chapters. And again, if you want to jump in, ask some questions along the way, that's great. This is just giving you an idea of what would be the most important information to kind of follow. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoints as we go along as well. You see PowerPoint 1 right now, or chapter 1? Or number 4? Which
Chapter.
one do you see 4?
Yep.
Okay, so I pulled that up in the wrong order. Hold on. How do you see chapter 1?
Yep.
All right. I don't know if you've had much for AT in your coursework yet. Some of you, if you've already had some special ed courses, might have some introductory information. I know we have at least one student in the group who's doing this as a graduate course, so they may have more background. But I always learn more about AT as I study it and as I present it as well. I've been an occupational therapist for 36 years, and out of those years, I've been an AT professional or consultant of some sort for 28 of those years. So I can never say that I know everything about assistive technology, but I have a long history with assistive technology. First thing that you really want to be aware of is that there actually is legislation that requires the consideration of assistive technology for any child who is receiving special education. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act, IDEA, they actually mention assistive technology, and there's also legislation specifically for AT. But in general, we're talking about devices and services. So devices is anything that can be used to maintain, increase, improve functional capabilities. So the additional information I'd have on that definition is that something that not all children have. So for example, many children now have access to computers, if not all. Many schools have access to one-on-one devices. So those students might have their AT needs met just through the general technology. So AT becomes AT when it's something that not all children have access to. Does that make sense? So a simple AT device can be an adaptive pencil grip because not everybody else needs an adaptive pencil grip, but one child needs it, and so that becomes assistive technology for that child. The service is what's necessary to be able to learn to use and to be successful with the technology. So that's a requirement really in the responsibility of administration and teachers and staff to be able to properly inform the individual users, the staff, the families, caregivers, and how to select, acquire, and use the AT device. You're probably familiar with the kind of array of services when we talk about AT being low tech to high tech. This array changes all the time. Low tech pretty much remains the way it's described here. Low tech, non-electronic devices that allow for increased access, increase functional capability. So it might be just providing a template for taking notes, and not all children have a template that can become a assistive technology device. So the mid-tech is really what used to be high-tech. Mid-tech is more electronic in nature, recorders, audiobooks, even text readers, because they are more mainstream sort of technology, and they aren't as complex in design. When we talk about high-tech AT, that really is changing as time goes on, because there's so much that can be done with basic technology that can do more than one thing. So if you think about tablets now with apps and how you can take pictures of apps or of documents, I just found out that I can take a picture with my notes on my phone. If you're iPhone users, does anybody else take pictures of documents on your iPhone, for example? And it actually can be used as a scanner. So that makes the iPhone an assistive technology device at that point, where you can scan and have it read back to you. So you can see that the complexity of the task, the sophistication of the technology increase as we move to high-tech devices. So here's more about the legal basis. I'm sure you're all familiar with IDEA. You're all either in a special ed program or you're taking a special ed minor. Is that right? Would you all fall in that category? Okay. So I'm sure you're familiar with IDEA, the national widespread legislation for providing education to all children, no matter their ability or disability. Section 504 comes from the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and this allows for even additional measures to ensure that children have access to accommodations. So if you're familiar with 504 plans, anybody know what a 504 plan is from schools? So if you don't qualify for special education under IDEA, you may qualify for an accommodation plan under Section 504 Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and that is an accommodation plan that does not require specialized instruction. So children, students who would fall, who would be allowed to access support or accommodations under Section 504 would have to have some sort of a medical diagnosis. And even after having a diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean you have a need. So there's some need for you to have an accommodation to be able to access your education. So AT can be provided at all those levels, from the special education services all the way to 504 services. ADA, of course, is the land sweeping legislation, which made sure there was no discrimination against individuals based upon their disability. So that is the document that guides all public facilities, all governmental, civic agencies that meet the needs of society, and it's required that there is access to all the services and goods and facilities. There's also some information from the Department of Education, ensuring that students are learning and through engagement and empowerment. There is a lot of talk about accessing the Common Core standards. Kind of is different from state to state, but in general, there's a basic knowledge base that students are gaining from their educational curriculum. And of course, there are standards in all areas of academics, but we can utilize AT supports to allow children to access those or meet those Common Core standards. And it's another way to frame our AT services by ensuring that students have access to those Common Core curriculum. AT has been known to be the great equalizer, meaning that with some sort of assistive technology, students are able to engage in the same or at least similar experiences than children who do not have disabilities. So the idea is to try to identify the achievement gap and narrow that gap based upon the kind of accommodations, modifications, and technology that can be used to assist students. Electronic curb cuts basically references the idea that there's something available to do something differently, like navigating a sidewalk. You have a curb cut, you can get across the sidewalk easier. The idea is that AT is integrated into our curriculum, not only the actual curricular materials, but in the teaching of the materials. So it's teaching and learning of students with disabilities. So you see it in this visual here, it's kind of a cogwheel. As the curriculum changes, so does the needs of the individual and the AT options. We'll be talking about reading, writing, and math, specific core academics in the next module. But that's generally our context. As I mentioned, I'm an occupational therapist, but I also have a license in special education. And our goal is always to provide access to the same opportunities that students have. So K-12, even pre-K, children are accessing reading, writing, math, and a variety of curricular areas. We want to make sure that all students have access to that at some level of, using whatever supports are available. The ATA, Alliance for Technology Access, has some core principles which are highlighted pretty well for you here. Maximizing independence, eliminating barriers, controlling your environment. That's a huge one for individuals who have more complex disabilities. A right to access the information that their peers have, such as textbooks, such as audiovisual information, such as verbal instruction from teachers. They have a right to not only be given, but also to use AT to minimize that achievement gap. Here we're talking now about the SET framework, which is part of the assignment. And so it's very basic in nature. It's simple to follow. SETT is our acronym for the Student Environment Task and the Tool. And Joy Zabala, who has worked with the Center for Assistive Technology, CAST, for a number of years, has come up with this framework that is very useful as we try to find AT for our students. So basically, we're we're analyzing the case. What are the problems the student has? What are they not able to do that others can do? You always want to maximize almost on what their strengths and their interests and their abilities are as you're analyzing the student's needs. You see here, we're not focusing on their inabilities, but we're identifying what is difficult for them. Environment is a huge component of what AT can do. Looking at how the environment, including the materials, equipment, the facility in general, allows students to access their learning. So we may look at the physical environment. We may look at the materials that are given to learn. We might look at the way things are structured through a schedule, what supports are available for all students, students who have special needs, and what resources are available in the variety of settings. So fully looking at the environmental aspects of learning. And then we want to identify the specific tasks. So what are they required to do? So a kindergartner, for example, is required to be able to sit at a desk, maybe for the first time. As a preschooler, that might not have been a requirement. Now a requirement is to sit at a desk with a group of peers and to manipulate papers and pencils and books and a variety of classroom materials. So we identify what it is that child does. Maybe we're evaluating a high school student who is in a science class, and what is the student doing? They're accessing scientific equipment as well as the other sort of school materials. So we want to identify specific sorts of tasks that are required in that setting. What are the critical elements? For some activities, critical elements may look different. If we're doing a scientific experiment, the critical element really is to understand the scientific components of the activity, not necessarily to read or write. So if reading and writing is interfering with an individual's ability to participate in the classroom, then we can find ways to change the way they read and write, because the ultimate goal is to understand the scientific principles. And then ultimately the tools. We're looking at trying to match the tools with the specific needs of the student. And that's really the challenge, is to match what you've determined to be the student needs and what fits within their abilities that is currently available. So we call it a features match, actually, right here. Next slide. So taking the student and the technology and figuring out what things matched up for those two continuums based upon student needs, abilities, expectations, and based upon the technology that provides these sorts of components: input, processing, output. So we will talk a lot more about that assessment throughout this course, because assessment's ongoing. It's not just a one-time thing for assistive technology. If you have done special education services, I know Stephanie, I see, came on. Are you our graduate student, or is Jeanette? One of you. No. Are you guys taking this course for graduate credit? Yes, Jeanette is, okay. So you might have had some experience with or at least some awareness of how technology impacts students who have special needs. But we're also going to talk about universal design. And you can see that universal design is a concept that also comes out of CAST, that Center for, I'm not sure what the acronym is for, but it's a technology resource center where the SET framework came out of, and also universal design for learning. Originally, universal design for learning stems from the universal design concepts from architecture. And so in our society, we have accessibility requirements through the ADA. And by providing universal design for everybody, the products and the environments can be usable by all without needs for specialized design or adaptation. So the CAST people have taken that into the educational arena and kind of coined the term universal design for learning. So the same idea is of increasing flexibility of teaching, decreasing barriers, allowing for greater access to the materials, the classroom, and the instruction. There are 3 areas that we'll talk about, or you'll read more about in the textbook in UDL, and they have to do with representation, action, expression, and engagement. Any questions so far about this? Because I want to just kind of move through to the next PowerPoint. Any thoughts or comments? All right.
I guess I have a question. Like when I log on to my courses and then we click for these things to come down, they don't show up in PowerPoint. It comes down below and then there's no way to print it. Do you have any recommendations on how to view it as PowerPoint so we could print them?
The PowerPoints, okay. So on
But when we
Canvas,
click on them, it goes like right underneath, the box opens up and they're in there. I even tried to like copy and paste like one of the documents and it's all
right,
distorted.
depending on your browser, Jeanette, for me, I'll just show you how it works for me when I go into any documents. I'll show you my screen here.
Okay.
So it may be different for you depending upon your browser, depending on your computer. All right. Do you see my module 1 read and review?
Yes.
Okay. So you said right here, you have this little down arrow, right?
Yeah, like I click on it and then below
Right.
a box will open it up and then they'll come in there.
Right. So that's your download document over there, which would be in your downloads folder. If you just click on the title itself, it'll give you a preview on Canvas.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's not easy to print from this view. It's just a preview to look
Yeah.
at the document without opening it. But if you
Okay,
actually
so if you
go
click on the
minimize
arrow,
the preview, down arrow is going to put it in your downloads folder.
okay,
Yep. Every
That's what
time
I
you see
needed
it
to know.
downloading there, then you go down there and double click that and it'll open up.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Everybody does that a little bit differently. I like to make these hyperlinks because when I see a blue text, I usually figure out it must link somewhere. So that would be
Yeah.
confusing, but yes, if you look for those little down arrows, or if you see underneath the second bullet where it says, what is AT? You see a little arrow with the box that tells you that's going to go to another tab, opens up another tab. So those are just some
Okay.
general Canvas tricks. So thanks for asking about that.
Now I know. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. I'm pretty much going to go through the first 2. So chapter 1, chapter 4, chapters 13 and 14 are just a little bit more extended learning on the same concepts. So we'll probably spend about 10 more minutes if you're looking at your time and trying to figure out what you have time for. All right.
I'm gonna log off now because I'm actually at work and our
Okay.
lunch is over.
You're just checking in. All right. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you.
Problem. So the rest of you, can you see chapter 4 now? Okay. All right. I do want you to understand universal design really well, because if universal design for learning is implemented in the classroom, we may see less need for assistive technology because students are able to access with less adaptations. And so the more universal design that's in place, the less need for complex sort of problem solving with AT. So I mentioned the flexibility. I mentioned the 3 areas which are defined here. The first one is how information is presented. That's one component of UDL. Another one is how you demonstrate your knowledge. Another one is how can you maintain engagement. We know it's beneficial for all, reduces barriers, provides some of those accommodations that may now not be necessary for other for AT needs. So the representation is how you gain information. So you're watching our PowerPoint, you're listening to an instructor, you're engaging with material. The action and expression is Here's some examples. So engaging with that information. Now we have a variety of ways to engage with information, right? Students nowadays have access to many more means of representation than we ever did. I ever did when I was in school in the 70s, 60s and 70s. So here's just a few examples. I know that students are able to access podcasts easily, YouTube videos. If you want to find more information about UDL, you just go to and Google it. So we know there's lots of ways of getting information. So UDL is maximizing on all the ways that we can represent information. Obviously, that's going to increase engagement as well. That's another UDL principle. But this focuses specifically on how we give the information. Whereas, so here's some examples of that. And some more examples. Whereas the second principle looks at multiple means of action and expression, providing alternatives to how students demonstrate or show their understanding. So we might have alternatives to handwriting. We might use alternatives to basic keyboarding. We might use alternatives to outlining tools, writing templates. These are some of the examples that are available. Different ways of showing your work through written expression, with word processing, with text to speech, where you type and spoken back, where it can be organized in a graphic manner, or supplemental words through word prediction. The third principle, sometimes it gets confused by the first two principles because it's now addressing multiple means of engagement, ways of trying to engage students in other capacities. So you may get multiple means of engagement through the first two principles for sure, looking at some of those ideas, right? There are different ways of accessing information, showing your knowledge. Now we're really focusing on motivation, getting kids eager and excited to learn. So now this is really the area that's probably the most progressive. We see new ways of doing this. We saw new ways through distance learning when we shut down during the pandemic. We found different ways that students can engage. We found different tools that they could use. Some students were able to get on their home computer. Some needed a laptop device. Some were able to access it on their tablet device. They're all different ways for students to engage. It might also just be in the classroom engagement, multiple means of sitting, ways of sitting and becoming engaged in the classroom. The idea is that one size does not fit all, and not all children are going to fit into the same sort of box, and we want to meet them where they're at. While it might seem somewhat overwhelming to think that we can meet every child's needs, especially if you're a general education teacher of 20 to 30 students, that's really the idea of UDL, is that you create your lessons with the idea of a variety of ways to share the information and for students to show their understanding. So the more we can reach that goal, the better it is for students. There is a lot of information now, but especially now during this day and age of distance learning, where we're looking at web-based instruction. So web accessibility, you'll have an assignment next week to create a web page, and you'll have to do an accessibility test on your web page, because even the computer now has opportunities for students to learn and access information. But if they have limitations in their reading or understanding, difficulty with visual processing of information on the screen, we can change and manipulate the way that's provided on a computer web page. So you'll have a chance to work on that in this course. There are many tools out there. I recently discovered myself, I was on a web page where there's a little icon in the lower corner that had a picture of a handicap accessible button. And when I clicked that, I could choose all kinds of ways to change my screen. I could change the color contrast, the size. I could have it read to me. So we're applying those ideas of universal design for learning in the classroom to the computer itself. And I think it's only going to become much more sophisticated as time goes on. So this World Wide Web Consortium, their mission really is to make sure web pages are accessible because they're being accessed in so many ways this day and age. So you all had some education courses, right? You've got either regular special courses. Have you heard of UDL prior to today? Okay. I'm finding more and more students have, but it's not commonly instructed. I found at different universities. So I'll reference it quite a bit through the course, but I just want to make sure we all have a general understanding of that. All right. So what you'll find in 13 and 14 chapters, I'm just going to look over here, pull it up, is more information on universal design and differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is another term to ensure that all students are being met at their ability level. So you might differentiate all the way to the lowest reader to the highest reader. You might differentiate all the way from the child who has cognitive disabilities to a child who is gifted and talented. So trying to differentiate at different levels of ability. So chapter 13 will cover that well. And chapter 14 talks about the implementation of AT in the schools, the process of getting it into the hands of students. So there just a little bit more information on the topics I just covered already. I really recommend that you look at the videos. I've selected really good user-friendly videos that will be helpful for you to understand the concepts a little bit better. If you have any questions about the assignment with the SET framework, feel free to give me a call. Generally, if you follow the rubric, you're going to be able to get through it pretty well. As I mentioned to you, Lauren, I'll put the rubric up for the discussions wherever that seems to be lost, and that'll be available. But for now, just make sure you do respond to somebody, because of course, discussions, the idea is that we're engaging, that we're learning from each other. That's really the only reason for a discussion, not just to answer a question. So are there any other thoughts or comments before we break away? As I mentioned, just being here today, you'll get some bonus points. So I've documented on that, so I can make sure I go back and give you those points for being here. That'll be available each week. I'll do the same format each week, go through what's expected for the week, go through the materials that were available, highlight what's important for the quiz. I think this quiz, just thinking about my day here, there's just a couple of questions I needed to update. I'll probably have it ready to go by, what am I doing right now? Probably by 3 or 4 o'clock if you're hoping to take the quiz soon, okay? I'll put the announcement out saying when it's ready to go. Any other comments, questions? All right, well, it's nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining me, and I will be in touch.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
I know.